I knew something was wrong the moment she replaced the founder's bronze statue with a digital art installation that pulsed with neon, declaring it the spirit of tomorrow. I stood there, a half-eaten bagel in my hand, watching two junior developers struggle to calibrate the damn thing while she glided by in her designer sneakers, demanding they elevate the vibe. The same headquarters where Mr. Harrison, the man who built this software empire from a garage, used to pace during server crashes, now smelled like cold brew and misplaced ambition. The oak conference table was swapped for a glass monstrosity that shattered conversations as easily as it reflected our nervous faces. 12 years. That's how long I'd been at Harrison Innovations. I joined when we were a scrappy team of 25, and our budget couldn't afford a single beanbag, let alone the wellness pods and a mindfulness studio. I was Harrison's anchor, his problem solver, his gatekeeper. While he dreamed in code and scrawled algorithms on whiteboards at 4 a.m., I made sure the contracts were solid, the clients were happy, and the competitors stayed at bay. He once called me the company's bedrock, and I wore that title like a badge of honor. Now he was gone. A sudden heart attack, quick and brutal. He didn't even get to send his final email. I found it in his drafts. The last line read, "Trust her. She'll know what to do." I wanted to believe he meant me, but the board didn't, or maybe they just panicked. Instead, they handed the keys to his daughter, Chloe, a woman whose only prior professional experience was curating a lifestyle brand and hosting digital detox workshops. Within a month, she'd restructured 3 departments, brought in a brand architect named Jasper, who wore bespoke hoodies, and replaced our tried-and-true project management system with a beta blockchain platform she called Nexus Flow. She didn't just step into the role. She stormed in and declared, "This is my legacy now," as if running a billion-dollar company was just another trend to conquer. And look, I know what you're thinking. Why didn't I leave? Why didn't I walk the moment she showed up in her 700 silk sweatsuit and started calling our engineers creative assets? I stayed because I knew something she didn't, something she never bothered to read. And before we go any further, a quick note. If you've made it this far and you appreciate stories where integrity eventually triumphs over ego, do me a favor and tap that subscribe button. I'm trying to hit a new milestone, and honestly, a small percentage of you are just lurking. Help me out, will you? Anyway, Chloe swaggered into my life like a protagonist in her own tech influencer biopic. She renamed our flagship software Helios because it sounded mythical, then cut support for our most loyal enterprise clients, some of whom had been with us since the first version. I watched her sip green juice while telling our head of security that protocols are just suggestions in a disruptive landscape. She announced layoffs through a team-wide broadcast during a Vision Day pep rally. And through it all, I kept my head down, smiling that serene, impenetrable smile I'd perfected over a decade of corporate battles. I let her believe she'd won, that she'd replaced the old guard and could bulldoze everything Harrison built with her agile squads and slideshows full of abstract art. But every time she flashed that perfectly white smile and called me a relic, I thought about Clause 17.2, the clause she never read, the one no one remembered, the clause her father added the night he called me from the hospital, his voice a whisper, but as clear as day. "You're the lock, she's the whirlwind. Don't let her blow the house down." So, I waited. I watched. I let her play her game, and when she finally fired me, I didn't even flinch. "Let's be honest, Stella," Chloe said, balancing a kombucha in one hand and her iPad in the other. "This company has been held back by outdated paradigms for too long. And nothing says legacy burden quite like a COO who still uses spreadsheets. There were 23 of us in the executive suite, 24 if you counted Jasper's emotional support pug that he insisted on bringing for team morale. I sat 2 seats from the head of the table, the same spot I'd occupied for over a decade. Across from me, Robert, our CFO, just stared, blinking slowly like he was watching a slow-motion disaster. "Stella," Chloe said, turning toward me with a condescending smirk. Your services are no longer aligned with our forward-looking vision. We're sunsetting your position, effective immediately. Your access has already been revoked. Oh, and security has a box for you. She tapped the slide behind her. It was a picture of a bird soaring above a skyline with the word "release" in a bubbly pink font. The silence was deafening, the kind you remember in your nightmares. I didn't say a word. I didn't ask for a reason or a second to collect my dignity. I simply reached for my tablet, closed it neatly, and stood up so slowly the leather of my chair gave a soft sigh. "Good luck to all of you," I said, my voice as smooth and polished as a stone, as I walked out. I could hear Jasper mutter something about ice queens, but underneath my suit jacket, behind the calm I'd built, my chest felt like it was on fire. 12 years, dismissed with a slideshow and a sugary drink. I rode the elevator down alone, my eyes fixed on the mirrored doors, watching my own face try not to crack. Chloe wanted a reaction. She wanted tears or shouting or some sort of public scene she could quote in her next podcast. She got nothing. Because what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was this. Buried in my original employment contract, under a mountain of legalese and forgotten addendums, was a clause. Clause 17-2. Drafted late one night in Harrison's office over a glass of whiskey, and the final wishes of a man who knew his daughter would one day try to dismantle his life's work. It read, "In the event of any proposed sale, merger, or acquisition, final approval must be obtained from the Chief Operating Officer, herein defined as Stella Vance, regardless of employment status prior to execution." This clause remains binding for the duration of her natural life until the company ceases operations entirely. Veto power. Absolute. Binding. Harrison had trusted me to be the last line of defense, a failsafe, and Chloe had just fired me, not knowing she had handed me the trigger. As I stepped out into the crisp evening air, box in hand, I felt something new, something close to amusement. Not joy, not peace, but a flicker of wicked possibility. Let her keep dancing in her delusion. Let her sign deals and take meetings and fantasize about stock options and flashy exits. Because when the first offer landed on her desk, they would come looking for one more signature. Mine. The first offer came in a week after my firing. A company named Silverwood Capital. The name alone should have set off every alarm in the building. Their business model was essentially corporate demolition. Gut the culture, liquidate the assets, flip the shell for a profit. Chloe was ecstatic during the pitch. I heard later she called them disruptive innovators and said their proposal was radiating forward energy. I sat at my kitchen table with a glass of wine and the PDF of the pitch deck, forwarded anonymously from Robert, who hadn't spoken to me since I walked out. He didn't include a message, just the file titled Project Legacy. That was her code name for the sale, Project Legacy, rising from the ashes of competence, apparently. She was moving fast, too fast. Most CEOs play coy, flirt with bidders. Chloe opened the company's digital kimono and rolled out a red carpet. She'd already sent over client data, internal forecasts, even Harrison's old software roadmaps. Clause 17.2 started itching, like a loaded gun tucked under my coat. I could have fired it then, could have scrolled denied across a legal pad and sent it to her. But Chloe wanted to put on a show, and I'd let her build the stage. A direct veto now would have looked petty, emotional, like a disgruntled ex-employee lashing out. No, the move had to come later, when she was completely exposed, when she'd committed to her lies and looped the board in, convinced I was a ghost. So I waited, and while I waited, I made my own moves. First call was to Amelia, our former head of marketing, whom Chloe had replaced with a 22-year-old influencer who listed growing engagement as a skill on her resume. Amelia still had her files, exit interviews, user feedback, and Chloe's notorious Synergy Sundays policy, where she encouraged older employees to quit if they didn't mesh with the vibe. Second call was to Gary in legal, not his real name, obviously. He was the one who helped Harrison draft it. He told me Chloe hadn't even requested my contract from archives. She was too busy rebranding the company's internal icons. Third was to Diane, our PR director from the golden days. She now worked with an independent crisis management firm. "Keep me posted," she said, "and when it's time to light the fuse, I'll bring the marshmallows." I created a private folder, Chloe's Chronicle, and started collecting not rumors, not bitterness, but receipts. PDF after PDF of policy violations, screenshots of her DMs, and a leaked group chat where Chloe called the dev team code monkeys. And through it all, I smiled, took long walks, watched the news, and waited for her name to show up in the business columns, just like she always dreamed. Because Chloe wasn't trying to run the company, she was trying to sell it like a lottery ticket. Her endgame was a quick payout and a TED Talk. And once those wires were set, once her intentions were stapled to the boardroom walls, I'd be ready to flip the switch. I was just here to tie the knot. The night Harrison added the clause, we were the last two left in the building. It was past midnight, the cleaning crew had gone home, and the lights in the hallway were on motion sensors. We were running on espresso and a grim reality. He'd just gotten the second test results back. Stage 4 glioblastoma. The kind of diagnosis that doesn't end with a press release. It ends with people pretending they weren't crying in the stairwell. He looked smaller that night, still sharp as ever, but like someone had turned down the light on him. He sat across from me in his glass-walled office, sleeves rolled up, hair disheveled, his eyes fixed on the old company mission statement etched on the wall. Build with purpose. Protect what matters. "I'm not afraid to die," he said, like it was a minor bug report. "But I'm afraid she'll kill what I built." I didn't have to ask who she was. "She thinks this company is a brand," he said. "It's not. It's a promise. Every person in this building gave me years of their life. You gave me all of yours." I said nothing, just let the silence settle between us. He pushed a manila folder across the desk. "I want you to have this. I want you to be the firewall." I opened it. The clause was already written. Veto authority, absolute, irrevocable. Not as an employee, but as a last resort. I don't trust the board. I don't trust Chloe. I barely trust myself anymore. He smiled then, crooked and tired. "But I trust you. You're the only person I've ever known who says no to power when it's wrong." He paused and added, "And you're also the only one she'll never see coming." We signed it right there on his desk with a fountain pen he'd won in a bet against the CTO. He also added a file, just a short message, barely a minute long, saved to a flash drive. His voice cracked near the end when he said, "If you're watching this, Stella, you know what to do." That flashback hit me like a freight train the morning I met with my attorney, Ellis. We sat across from each other in his downtown office, the walls lined with casebooks and the smell of old paper. He read through the original contract, nodding slowly. "Still valid," he confirmed. "Ironclad, no expiration." He looked up. And yep, Chloe never pulled the employment archive. Amateur hour. "She thinks I'm out," I said quietly. "She's not the only one," he responded, a slow smile spreading across his face. "You planning to act now or wait?" "Wait," I said. "She's not done digging her own grave." "That's the Stella I remember," he said. "Surgical." On the drive home, I turned off the radio. It was just me, the hum of the tires, and Harrison's voice echoing in my mind. Build with purpose. Protect what matters. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about the developers she'd laid off while hiring social media managers. About the single mom in accounting who got pushed into an early voluntary separation. About the founder who trusted me to guard his life's work from his own blood. Chloe was a child with matches, and I was the fireproof safe she hadn't noticed was still sealed. The storm was coming. I wasn't going to stop it. I was going to aim it. Chloe strutted into the Thursday board meeting like she had just won a televised competition. White jumpsuit, gold earrings, iPad in hand, and that slick grin she wore when she thought the world owed her applause. "Silverwood is on board," she said, practically vibrating with glee. "Full acquisition, $180 million. They want us badly." Jasper clapped like a toddler seeing fireworks. Robert rubbed his temples. The others stared in polite horror, but no one dared interrupt her monologue. A transition in 12 months, total leadership restructure, bonuses for all key staff, and me? She placed a manicured hand on her chest. I stay on as creative visionary, not CEO. Creative visionary. She was launching a podcast series. She tapped her iPad and beamed. Legal just needs to process the paperwork. Signatures, compliance stuff. We're in the final stretch. But the stretch ended abruptly when Evelyn from legal cleared her throat. Chloe didn't like interruptions. Her smile twitched. Yes? Chloe, there's one issue. The COO signature. Chloe blinked. There is no COO. I fired her. Yes, but per the contract, a sale must be co-signed by the COO, or more specifically, by Stella Vance. That's when the silence turned predatory. Chloe laughed. Not politely, not nervously, but a sharp, nasal bark that echoed off the glass walls. She's gone, null and void. That contract is worthless. Evelyn didn't laugh. Not according to Clause 17(2). It's a special provision, binding, irrevocable, and not contingent on employment status. It still holds veto power. Her gold earrings stopped swaying. That afternoon, I was sipping herbal tea for the optics when I got the first frantic email from legal. Subject line, urgent inquiry, contractual clarification. 10 minutes later, Chloe herself texted me. No greeting, no emoji, just, "You're not actually going to block this, are you?" I let her stew for a few hours. Then I sent her one sentence, simple and surgical. See Clause 17(2). The next morning, I woke up to a leaked memo in my inbox from someone in finance. Chloe had called an emergency meeting with her vision pod to discuss alternative pathways to stakeholder buy-in. Translation, she was losing it, and I hadn't even started. Chloe's first move was textbook arrogance. She tried to rewrite the corporate charter. She called a closed-door meeting with legal and governance, brought in a shady consultant named Raul, who wore slippers without socks, and said things like, "Let's innovate the legal framework." Together, they proposed something called a sunset clause addendum to quietly kill Clause 17.2 without, actually admitting it existed. But the charter was locked. Any amendment required full board approval and unanimous legal counsel sign-off. Chloe's legal blitzkrieg ran face first into Evelyn, who had been quiet but had the spine of a steel beam. Evelyn refused, so Chloe pivoted. She tried charm. She left me a voicemail, all saccharine and wounded, like she was performing in a play. "Stella, I think this clause thing has just been misinterpreted. I'd love to grab coffee and realign our energies. We're both strong women, right? Let's not let old documents define us." When that didn't work, she tried money. Through a proxy, Jasper, of course. She sent me a sealed envelope via courier. No note, just a cashier's check for $400,000 and a printed NDA with a post-it that read, "Let's evolve." I didn't reply. I deposited the check into a separate account labeled Evidence Fund, and I scanned everything. Meanwhile, I started whispering. Not overtly, just small nudges. A forwarded email here, a clipped sentence there. Chloe's pitch deck to Silverwood, which included proposed layoffs of 60% of staff. A screenshot where she joked about replacing our QA team with an AI because it's cheaper and doesn't get emotional during reviews. An audio clip, blurry but clear enough, of her telling Raul, Once we get past these old-timers, we'll be lean and ready for resale. Think of it like a corporate cleanse. I never said the word whistleblower. I didn't have to. By week 2, Robert reached out. Subject line, "Can we talk?" His message was short. "This sale doesn't feel right. Can you share what you know?" Then came Daniel, our lead architect. "She's bleeding us dry. I don't know how long we can keep the servers stable with the hiring freeze. Is this really what Harrison wanted?" Even Amelia chimed in, sending me an archived spreadsheet of ethics complaints Chloe had buried. The coordinator had reported being told to sex up internal branding for investor appeal. The coordinator was later terminated for culture misalignment. I organized it all, created a digital command center, encrypted and time-stamped every document, message, and voice memo. It all went into what I called the Chloe Compendium, and still, I didn't fire the shot. Let her think I was bluffing. Let her feel the temperature rise without knowing where the flame lived. Chloe kept smiling for the cameras, tweeting nonsense like #StartupBoss and hosting webinars about empowering disruption. But the cracks were showing. Her board briefings got shorter, her voice tighter, her eyes twitchier every time someone said due diligence. And the best part? She had no idea who was leaking information. The company she thought she had conquered was slipping out from under her, one carefully placed thread at a time. All I had to do was keep pulling. The board meeting was supposed to be routine, at least on the surface. Officially, it was a strategic alignment session to present Chloe's final plan for company-wide restructuring and full autonomous authority. Unofficially, it was her coronation. She'd stacked the agenda, locked the guest list, and told security to deny anyone not explicitly cleared. She even had a barista stationed outside the conference room to elevate morale. There was kombucha, motivational posters, and a digital countdown timer ticking down to the vote. Chloe entered 15 minutes late, of course, dressed in all white like she was here to marry the company and bury it on the same day. "We stand at the edge of rebirth," she began, clicking to a slide titled Quantum Disruption and Rebirth, Phase 1. "Today, we reclaim our future, without dead weight or outmoded contracts." The board nodded, not enthusiastically, but politely. A few avoided eye contact. Robert was already checking his phone. That's when I walked in. No clearance, no invitation. Just the quiet click of the door and the hard clack of my heels across the tile. I didn't say a word, didn't look left or right, just walked straight to the center of the room and dropped a thick white binder on the polished table. I slid it across to Chloe like a final summation in a courtroom. She blinked. "You're not supposed to be here." I smiled. "I've heard that before." She reached for the binder with a forced smirk, thinking it was another bluff. She opened it. Page 1 was a printout of the NDA Jasper tried to sneak through legal, annotated in red by her own compliance officer, declaring it coercive and unenforceable. Page 2. The cashier's check, photocopied, labeled unauthorized offer. Page 3. Chloe's text messages, complete with timestamps and internal employee IDs. "Once we get past the dinosaurs, we'll be ready for resale." And then I plugged in the USB drive. The room went still as Harrison's voice filled the space. "And if this message is being played, I'm probably dead, which means I failed to outlive my daughter's ambition." His chuckle was tired but clear. "You're hearing this because Stella Vance has activated her authority. I gave her this veto clause because I knew one day someone might mistake this company for a product. It's not. It's a promise to our employees, to our users, to the values we wrote on a whiteboard in a garage. Honor them or get out." Silence. No clickers, no kombucha, no one moving. Chloe's face froze in a way I'd never seen, like her jaw wanted to argue, but her brain hadn't sent the script. Finally, one of the board members, Linda from governance, cleared her throat. "Is this real?" Robert, bless him, stood up. "Yes. And if half of what's in that binder holds, we've got more than a veto issue. We have a potential breach of fiduciary duty." Chloe's eyes darted from face to face, panic creeping behind her polished lashes. This is an ambush! She's bitter! She's jealous! This is illegal!" I folded my arms. "Then call your lawyer." "Oh, wait. You've gone through 3 in 2 months. Must be hard keeping allies when you pay in gaslighting and wellness quotes." Her mask didn't just slip. It shattered right there in front of the board. "I built this damn company!" she screamed, her voice cracking. "I own it!" Linda stood. "Actually, you inherited it, and now you may be in violation of the very structure your father created." The room was already shifting. Alliances were folding, momentum swinging. Silence was giving way to a quiet that sounded suspiciously like judgment. Chloe stood frozen, clutching her iPad like a life raft, surrounded by the very legacy she tried to bury, now rising from the floor like smoke. And me? I didn't even sit down. I just turned and walked out. Let them choke on the truth I'd been feeding them for weeks. The fire was lit. Let it burn. The withdrawal came less than 24 hours after the binder drop. Silverwood Capital issued a terse statement, barely 3 sentences long. "Due to unforeseen internal governance complications and material irregularities, we are suspending our acquisition of Harrison Innovations effective immediately." No mention of Chloe by name. No blame. But between the lines, it read like a restraining order served with a side of corporate acid. She went ballistic. By noon, she'd fired Evelyn from legal, demoted Robert pending review, and called an all-hands meeting that felt more like a hostage video than a morale booster. She stood in front of the company logo, now repainted with a sickly purple gradient, and declared, her voice trembling, "This is a minor turbulence event. We remain aligned with visionary principles. Anyone questioning leadership is free to find the nearest exit." Jasper stood behind her, nodding like a bobblehead. She announced a press conference for the next morning to clarify our mission and reframe the narrative. Translation: gaslight the planet before the truth hit the bloodstream. But it was too late. That night, from my kitchen, I composed one final email. Subject line: Transparency Matters. I sent it to the company-wide distro list, the board, our investors, the Harrison Alumni Network, and 5 carefully selected reporters known for loving corporate scandal. Attached were Chloe's own private messages, chat exports, audio files. Let's milk the brand before the old people realize what's happening. HR is a formality. Culture is whatever looks good on Instagram. I'll be out in 2 years with a book deal and an apartment in the Hamptons. And just for symmetry, I reattached Harrison's video. The story exploded. Tech Digest called it the boardroom betrayal. The Chronicle ran with startup air implodes under the weight of her own hashtags. Employees staged a walkout the next morning, not dramatic, just orderly refusal. Whole teams working from home without explanation. Chat channels going dark. Daniel, our lead architect, quietly removed her admin access to the production servers. Chloe panicked. She called the press conference anyway. She arrived in sunglasses and a white trench coat, like she was testifying before Congress. "We are facing a coordinated smear campaign," she said, her lips stiff, led by a disgruntled former employee with a vendetta and too much time on her hands. A reporter raised his hand. "Are you referring to Stella Vance, the woman whose veto clause was legally binding and whose dismissal violated your father's original governance framework?" She didn't answer. She walked off stage mid-sentence, and the live stream ended with a freeze frame of her looking slightly left, her mouth half open, like a glitch in a video game. I sat on my porch that night, sipping a cider while the hashtags trended. Hashtag Harrison Legacy, hashtag Chloegate, hash Stella Knows. I didn't tweet. I didn't celebrate. I just waited, because there was still one piece left to move, and she was about to find out what it looks like when the woman you fired writes your ending. The vote to remove Chloe was unanimous. They didn't even call it a vote at first, just a closed executive decision, but everyone knew. She walked into the boardroom with her hair slicked back and a fresh PR handler in tow. And she walked out without a title, without a desk, without even a plan B. The board released a statement later that day. Effective immediately, Chloe Harrison has stepped down from her role as CEO of Harrison Innovations. Stella Vance will lead the interim executive committee while we reestablish strategic alignment in accordance with the founder's vision. Strategic alignment, that's what they called it. But what it really meant was, she was right. We messed up. Fix it. Chloe didn't speak to me, didn't look at me. Not when they walked her past the development bullpen. Not when they revoked her building badge. Not even when she caught a glimpse of me through the glass of the conference room where it all began. She paused there in the hallway, clutching a worn leather purse that clashed with her expensive blazer. Her expression wasn't angry. It wasn't even bitter. It was hollow, like someone had finally shown her the ledger, and she realized she'd only been rich in delusion. Inside that conference room, I stood at the head of the table where Harrison used to stand during product launches and company anniversaries. The table was stacked with printed offers from Silverwood, from another firm, from that sketchy shell company. Deals that promised champagne exits and layoffs like rounding errors. I shredded them one by one. No ceremony, no dramatics, just clean, deliberate cuts. Then I plugged in a flash drive. The screen lit up with a slideshow. Harrison's notes, sketches, team photos from the first year. His original plan. An employee-owned restructure, phased over 5 years. Equity for staff, voting shares, a long-term governance built not on ego but on endurance. Gasps, nods, a few tears. This, I said, my voice steady, was his dream. Not stock buyouts, not buzzwords, just a company that builds with purpose and protects what matters. They approved the plan in under 20 minutes. The next day, we announced the restructure. Staff would receive ownership, leadership roles would be earned, not inherited. Chloe's name was quietly removed from the About page. She stood in the hallway again that morning, not trying to sneak in, just watching. I opened the door, said nothing, and just let her see me standing where she had laughed me out of the room, her father's vision alive and in motion, the company humming back to life under hands that knew how to build, not bleed. She turned and walked away. No goodbye, no speech, just the echo of heels fading down a hallway that no longer belonged to her. And I went back to work, because empires built on ego crumble, but the ones built on trust, they rise, and I had a company to rebuild. So the true value of a company isn't in its brand, its buzzwords, or its potential for a quick sale. It's in the people and the principles that built it. Integrity, loyalty, and long-term vision will always prove to be more powerful than short-sighted greed and self-serving ambition. Never underestimate the power of your own quiet competence. In a world full of noise and grand gestures, the most lasting impact is often made by those who stay true to their values, do the right thing when no one is watching, and protect what truly matters. Your dedication and hard work have a profound value, even if they aren't always celebrated in the moment.